Say, Curtis, you love technology, don't you?
I absolutely do, Max. Just as long as it doesn't get out of hand.
Oh, well, you know what? You'll still have fun with this week's episode because we're talking to author Michael Bland for his recently released book, The Price of Freedom. It's also the end of a trilogy that he began back in 2020 and really focuses on the proliferation of surveillance tech. We've got the agency, the shadowy group operating in the background, and our main character, Dray Quintero, a tech developer, caught right in the middle of the whole thing.
So it sounds like this technology gets right out of hand.
Exceedingly so.
Citywide blackout starts right now.
Welcome to Citywide Blackout with your hosts, Max Bowen and Curtis Hughes. With years of experience in journalism, music, and entertainment business, they put their knowledge to work, bringing you the best in-depth, fun, and sometimes outrageously bizarre interviews with authors, musicians, and many other creators from around the world. With the right amount of gusto and a few F-bombs thrown in for emphasis, you're sure to have a good time. So put up your feet, grab a beverage, and let's go.
All right, Michael. Well, man, this is it. The last book, the end of the trilogy. I can't believe we're here, man, but here we are. There is so much to talk about, but I want to ask, just give us a quick run through as to what this book is all about.
So, first of all, thanks for having me back on the show. It's great to be back. Love it. With the third book, at the end of the second one, it's everything is just destroyed. Everything is the worst. Everything that Dray and his helpers, his assistants, his fellow rebels try to do collapsed. Now what? Now Dray is imprisoned. His daughter Raven is imprisoned, and there's no hope. It seems like everything is done. And then he gets a little glimmer of hope from a completely unexpected source. And it means, though, risking Raven, risking things. And he takes the lead and manages to get out of that prison, reconnects with many of those who survived the end of the second book, but not all did. And then it's the decision. What do you do? Because you tried, you failed. The agency won. The agency beat you. They're in power. So it's then he has a choice. I mean, he could try to fight, but he's fought before. Try to run. He's run before and couldn't. So he has to do something else, something that no one sees coming.
What a charming opening we have here for this one. This is good. It's very upbeat and happy. I think Dre's gonna be okay. Right? Yeah. The look on your face is like,
well, okay.
Well, we'll see what happens. But I love this opening. This is a very just tense and dark opening. But this, as I mentioned before, this book, The Price of Freedom, is the final part, the end of the trilogy. Was it always the plan to do a 3-book series, or did you say, okay, we'll do one and sort of see how things land?
Well, so the first book was originally just going to be a standalone book.
Oh.
However, when I was writing the end of the first book, the analogy that I had kind of in my head is like the Matrix, the original Matrix. Let's not talk about 2 or 3 or 4. Did I say that now? The original Matrix was great. You had Neo, he becomes the one. And then at the very end, he has that phone call with the agents and saying, essentially, let's find out what happens, right? Well, the end of The Price of Safety, the first book, was that. It was a beginning, middle, and end, but the last scene opened up this bigger world and this bigger story. Trust me, I tried a couple different ways is that really how I want to do this, right? Because I was envisioning just a single book. But the story is the story. That was where I was leading, which opened the door to the bigger world. And so then at that point, after the first book came out, I started planning books 2 and 3. Because at this point, okay, I know I'm down the rabbit hole. I'm in it. So to follow the story and to finish the story, and I could see where it was going to go. And I'm so pleased with how it all turned out in the end.
I love that. I love that you got to the end and said, no, I don't think I'm going to stop here. Now, given that you didn't have the trilogy planned out in the first place. It sort of came after you got to the end of book one. How'd you go about sort of planning the rest of it?
Well, that's a good question. What I tried to do is see where that story would naturally go, but also I didn't want it to be predictable at all, because not only is that terrible for a reader, but that's horrible for a writer. The worst thing when you're bored with what you're writing. So I wanted to develop not only the story itself, but also the challenge, because the main character, Dray, the biggest thing that drives him through all three books is wanting to protect his family. He loves his daughters more than anything. He wants to protect his family. He's being pulled into and throwing them into this very dangerous world. So that conflict, that tension builds in the second book and then the third book. And events that happen in The Price of Safety actually, I think, worked out extremely well with the second and third book, especially in relation to his daughters. And they're not just along for the ride. They are engaged. They are critical parts of the entire story. Well, with it, I have a bunch of twists and surprises with it, which hopefully readers don't see coming, but once it does happen, they go, "Oh, okay, it makes sense." And because again, if I don't do it, if that's not the reaction, then I haven't done my job. But also the emotional impact of it. These characters, I put them through hell and back, and they don't all survive. And it's a very tense, huge thing, because what I was really trying to convey, and like in like World One, which was an inspiration in 1984, and you can see with Andor and some other stories, is if you're going to really rebel, I mean, what it has to take to do that, to say, I'm going to risk my life, I'm going to risk others I care about, I'm going to risk everything for an ideal and for something that you feel so passionately about, that you're going to do everything you can to change things. And I try to show that in the stories.
Michael, we're starting this book off at a pretty low point. How does that kind of shape the story from this point into the book moving forward?
A really good question, because I had to show them at that low point, and how do they climb out of it? I certainly couldn't show, oh, it's 6 months later and they're skipping down the street. No. That's not believable, and it's also a cheat. I put these characters in this horrible position. I need to show how they get out of it and what they sacrifice to get out of it. So it was a very conscious decision. So it takes a little while for them to get out, but the tensions rise starting from the very first chapter. And just so you and your listeners know, I mapped this all out. I have to. The world that I have, the technology and the monitoring, the surveillance, I couldn't just, they just hid behind a bush. No, that's not going to fly, right? And I had to make them clever and intelligent. They're still overwhelmed. There's still massive resources against them, massive number of people trying to stop them. So they had to be extremely clever. But I first had to get them out of the hole that I stuck them in at the end of the second book.
Do you think that this will be the end?
Great question. I've already had a number of people going, so what's after the third book? Are you going to do more? This trilogy is done. The story is done. Then I do have up to possible spin-offs. I don't know if I'm going to go there yet. The question of what's next, that's one of the potential options. I've been writing this series for 6-7 years, so I have other book ideas, and so it's now I have that challenge myself of what do I want to write next. And that, like I said, there are a couple spin-offs that I really like the ideas of, but I've also have some really fun, different kinds of stories that I'm playing around with.
I imagine writing the end, when you got to the end, that had to be the hardest 2 words of the whole trilogy to write.
Honestly, I still get a little choked up. These characters I've lived with for years. I love these characters. I've poured parts of myself into them. So to have them at the end of their journey, it's me.
Yeah. And I like that we're keeping the options open for the spin-offs, because it's a chance to kind of really explore the world that you've created a lot more with these brand new adventures without, being like, okay, we're done. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, you guys.
Right. No, I definitely it is a trilogy. It's not a I even had one reader go, can it be a four series? I'm like, no, 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 trilogy. Trilogy, try, three. So but I do have there are definitely some really good potential spin-offs, some advancements for specific characters. This story in and of itself is done, but other survivors, I could definitely play around with a couple ways to proceed from there. It could be a lot of fun.
Now, oh, definitely. It's always fun to do this. Now,
Yeah.
let's talk characters. Let's begin with Dray Quintero. He is our main character, the hero of the story. How has he evolved over the course of the three books?
That's a good question. I When he starts out, he is a family man. He's law abiding. He is a very skilled engineer and very creative. He also is a key architect of the overall surveillance system that oversees all the cameras in the country. And he did it really to, guess what, help protect his kids. Right? You create this world where a crime becomes almost non-existent, and that is a way to make the world better for your kids, like a lot of fathers would want to do. So he starts out that way. By the end, he becomes a scarred but determined leader, and he becomes the leader of the rebellion by the end of it, and he becomes the critical piece. Every one of the characters in it plays a role, some very important roles, but he is the critical piece in the series.
What really spawned the character in the first place? You know, like what made you think, this is who I'm going to have as my hero?
Well, I first of all wanted to have a character. I needed to have a character that was a understood the technology and could manipulate and could work with it and use it to his advantage. Because one of the themes in the story is technology. That technologies could be good or evil. It's a tool, just like a hammer, just like anything else. But it's how you use it. And with the theme is that technology, if we aren't cognizant of it, it can start to be used in ways that we don't realize, and it can be used just as if the way that you don't know how closely your phones are listening to you right now. It's primarily to do ads. First time my wife and I talked about going to Iceland, suddenly Facebook started showing us both ads left and right. Was that coincidence? No. So I needed to definitely have a character that knew how things worked and how to try to get around it, how to offset it, those kinds of things. With Dre in particular, and with that need, he was inspired by my two grandfathers. They were both engineers. My mother's father was a chemical engineer, and my dad's dad was a structural engineer. And back after Pearl Harbor, they both tried to enlist in the war. They both were rejected because of their knowledge and were told that they're too valuable staying at home. So my mom's dad, the chemical engineer, ended up working at a bomb making factory in Texas during the war, which my grandmother kept saying she kept expecting to hear a boom of explosion. Yeah, which some factories, unfortunately, that happened, not with my grandfather's, and my dad's dad helped build battleships up in Brooklyn, I think the Brooklyn shipping yards. Yeah, up in the New York area. So they're both an inspiration and kind of an homage with Dre, my main character.
Yeah, yeah. And you talked earlier about, like technology or phones are listening to us. You mentioned Iceland, all of a sudden the ads kind of pop up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this book winds up being a little bit like foreshadowing, because now we're in the era of AI and there's all this talk about how it's going to like just change everything, really?
And it's already going to change things. And the start of my series, I did a lot of research before I started the first book and throughout the series. And I wanted to make it as realistic as possible and trying to take what is on the cutting edge now and where it could advance in 20, 25 years. And what's scary is some of the technology has already started to come true. For example, right 2 months after the second book, The Price of Rebellion, came out, in the series is a device called a DNA scanner. Because we shed dead skin cells and hair follicles, just normal part of life. Well, in my book, the DNA scanner sucks that out of the air, runs the DNA, and identifies you. 2 months after The Price of Rebellion came out, a company in California announced they created the exact same machine. Now they claim they'll stick it on hiking trails so that if a hiker goes missing, yeah, no, That's not how it's going to be used. Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
not at
That's
all
never how it
concerning.
goes.
Well,
never.
it's really interesting because when you think about how tech was when your first book came out just 5 years ago, there's a
Yeah.
big jump. Like I don't think AI was really. I mean, it was talked about, but I don't think it was. It just wasn't what it is now. Now it's
Correct.
all over the place. Like ChatGPT, I'm pretty sure didn't even exist. You know, these things were all, and if they did, they were so clunky and poor performing that it was more of a joke than anything else.
It certainly wasn't mainstream.
No,
like it is.
no,
Absolutely not. And where companies are using it and kids are using it for school, I think it was absolutely nowhere near what it is in just the 5-6 years for me writing these books.
Michael, you couldn't have predicted a more like tech-friendly future, perhaps something nicer. Just maybe.
Maybe the next series.
I hope. If you're gonna shape, Michael, if you're gonna shape the future, shape us a good one, please. That's all I'm gonna ask.
I will do what I can. I will, but let's be honest.
Yeah, happy endings are boring.
Humans can. There's that. There's the story side. Having everyone frolic in a field is not a very interesting book to read. I mean, and trust me, I definitely have good people in these stories. Just kind of the old saying about bad things happening to good people. Well, that's my story.
Michael, we talked earlier about you've lived with these characters for such a long time, and they mean so much to you. With regards to Dray, do we think that he's wound up in a place and has become the person that you anticipated?
Oh, good question. Definitely with the first book, I thought that he would get there. And as I was mapping out the second and third book, I knew when I was thinking about the trilogy, I knew where I wanted him to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But I also couldn't cheat, if that makes sense. You really needed to go through the trials and the tribulations and the heartache and the struggle to get to that point. Having someone that is going to risk family and friends and life and everything to be this leader of this ragtag little rebellion, that takes a level of courage and confidence and struggle that you can't I couldn't just create a character. I don't think it would be believable. So, but by the end, I do feel that he got to that point. I felt that his victory at the end was so earned that hopefully the reader cheers that felt they've also had that challenge and that victory themselves because they went through that through Dray, and with the 3 books written through Dray's eyes, first person, that I hope that makes it even more raw and more relatable, and part of it's their victory too.
Sure. Do we meet any other new characters in the third book?
We do meet a few new characters. One, you get to know more about Zion, who you meet in the end of the second book. But there are new characters, and a few of them are linked to a prior character, but then a couple that are just brand new as well, and what they bring to the story and their own characters and their own abilities.
We've talked a lot about just the tech and how this kind of like influences story, but I'm curious if you wound up using any like real life events, either as like a direct influence or just kind of like a background idea.
Well, I can tell you where the original story idea kind of came from, which, and this is however many years ago it's been. I was living in Chicago at the time, and I was on the L one day, and every single person on that car I noticed was looking at their phone. I mean, nose buried in their phone. And so I'm looking around. I'm like, the weird thought that went through my head. I'm like, I could just start stripping naked, and no one would know. No one would have any idea, right? But then not that I did, but before I even thought to, I looked up, and on the ceiling of the train car there were 3 cameras. So while no one is watching, someone is essentially always watching. And that was really kind of the inspiration with the story to begin with, is how do you operate in a world if you are in danger or someone you care about is in danger? If someone's always watching, how do you protect them? How do you hide them? How do you, do the things to try to help them? And it also started making me think that we just as a society seem to really just accept that there are all these cameras all over the place. They can watch us. And I think the statistic in London is the average person is caught on video 338 times throughout a day. That's London in, I think that was 2024. What's the world going to be in 2047?
Well, I am going to be moving to the middle of nowhere tomorrow. Goodbye, everyone. Next time we do the show,
so, you know.
yeah, no, but that's a real concern, you know, and like you said,
Sure.
we just accept it. We're like, oh, it's the price of doing business. Oh, you know, I'll do it if I get to have my TikTok and whatnot. We take it basically.
Just take it, just assume it, and with that is the TikToks and the Gmail accounts and everything else. These free accounts, nothing is free.
Nope.
Sorry.
Nope.
And trust me, I'm not the tin foil hat kind of guy, but the more I started doing some research on this book, I started kind of wondering what the aluminum foil was.
And this really is just reality. Like, I can recall when like TikTok was in the news when they were going to ban it because they're saying, oh, it's a huge security risk. They're listening to you. I'm thinking, yeah, but Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram aren't.
Right. And a lot of especially younger people nowadays, they get their news from social media,
Sure,
of whatever version they want to do, and you not only don't know what kind of news they are getting, because it's everyone's so fragmented that you can choose whatever version of news that you want that fits your particular beliefs.
Whatever version of the truth that fits your narrative.
Exactly. And then at the same time, what's watching them.
Speaking of research, Michael, I mean, this series, of course, had to have a ton of research. How'd you get the facts to you? Especially as you mentioned, the facts can be very, very slanted depending on like where you look.
So I would go through different outlets. I definitely try to stay to the more the mainstream in terms of like the Associated Press and CNN and those kinds of, just try to do the most balanced in terms of ideas and technology, but also I went more on the scientific type of journal type of articles and websites, and I had a whole list of various websites that I would go to, articles talking about various technology. One of them that was called this X12 ice, this version of water that they've created, that they turn it into this ice that is almost diamond hard. And so you take something like that and, well, okay, 30 years from now, what could that be? And there are ideas like that I end up not using, some that I did, but it's all in the service of the story. So if I never had a thing for ice, for example, then okay, I toss that aside. But I really tried to look for reputable sites and try to do like a second check, like a second source, to make sure that, is this actually something that's legitimate, or is it, some high school kid's dream of, make ice out of water. That'd be cool, kind of thing. So it was fun.
It sounds fun, man. And really, as we talked about before on this program, the research is like, it's like the endless like rabbit hole, and it can be hard to stop and say, okay, now it's time to actually write.
Right. That's why I said like some things that I just end up not using, either service of the story, or you kind of go, really?
It's just for like your own fun.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So there are some things just kind of go down the rabbit hole. You finally go, okay, stop procrastinating. It's time to write, kind of thing. But yeah, it was a great time. Interesting stuff out there.
Now, given this is a trilogy, did you need to map out the events? And if so, how did that go?
Oh, yes. There are two kinds of writers. There's the pantser and the planner. The write by the seat of your pants, which Stephen King is probably the most successful. And there's the kind that had to plan out ahead of time. At one point, I tried to do it by the seat of my pants, and it was an absolute train wreck. So I'm never doing that again. And that story will never see the light of day. It's been burned and buried in a hole. But so I planned it all out, and each of the stories, the planning became bigger and bigger. The second book, the outline ended up being about 110 pages. This last book was about 160 pages before I started writing. Now, this included themes and included emotions that the characters are going through. There was dialogue, there was almost entire scenes, but I had to map it all out. Not only because I want a fast-paced moving story. So there's a lot of what I thought was cool stuff, but it slowed the story down. or extraneous, or it just seemed like kind of fun, but it really wasn't didn't add to the story. So I've also learned one thing about myself. If I write a scene and then I try to cut it later, I kick and scream and I try to convince myself 18 different ways why to save it. If it's in the planning stage and I'll be like, oh, that's kind of sad, cut, and it's cut. That was very helpful so that when I started writing, I was able to do the rough draft pretty quickly. And because by then I've been living the story. Each one of those, uh, the the outline, if you call it, took almost a year to do for each of the novels. But when I was then able to write, each rough draft took 2 to 3 months, and then about another year of editing, roughly. This last book actually was quicker because, well, by then I had my world, I had my characters. It was a lot easier to dive in, and I saw where the story was going to end it.
You know, Michael, you say that this Seat of the Pants book is burned and buried in a hole, but I'm thinking it's around somewhere. I'm thinking if we do some digging, we can find it.
Oh man, I would cry.
Every writer has that book.
That sounds like an admission of, yeah, it's around.
Yeah, see, I think it is. I think we need to do some digging.
I'm enough of a pack rat. It probably is.
Yeah, it's somewhere out there.
You know what? Actually, I bet my dad has a copy now. I say that. Shoot,
right.
I need to go up to visit him and go through his drawers.
Yeah, your dad's like, listen, thinking, that's right. I do have that over there.
Note to self: don't tell him about this interview.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, because he would.
You know, you bring up an interesting point there about the whole editing process. Was there a particular scene that you really kind of struggled with wanting to keep in and having to take it out, or vice versa?
Ooh, there were a few different scenes that are very difficult, whether to keep in or not. And really more the second book. The third book, it was tighter. And I think each one has gotten tighter. So in terms of the third book, cutting, it was just like little things. The second book, I definitely had a couple really great, fun action scenes, but it was almost like we're going off on this tangent to do this fun thing over here, and then we might come back to the story. And so, very sad, but unfortunately, I had to cut that.
It's always hard to have to like cut scenes or chapters or whole like characters too. It can be very tough, especially if the editor's like, no, this like makes the book a lot better. Get rid of it.
Yes. Or also in the first book, something happens to one of the characters that, well, my wife hit me when she read it. One of my really good friends was on vacation on the beach reading, thinking that she was going to have this nice, sweet story, and called me up going, how dare you? I'm all upset and tense and I'm on the beach. I've had another friend just like text me saying the page number. I knew exactly why and what it was. And he mad at me. So yeah, I've had some really good reactions, but at the same time, then I've done my job as a writer to have a reaction. If no one blinked, then I haven't done my job.
Exactly. Also, this is why you read the back of the books. You know what you're getting yourself into. There's no like, oh, I thought this is going to be like a lighthearted romp. No.
Right, yeah. Where are the people frolicking in the fields, right? Yes.
Well, they were, but then they all died, and you set that a field on fire.
Exactly. Yes, and buried it along with the first book.
Exactly. Exactly.
Your friend wasn't mad at you. Your response probably was something to the effect of, "No, you're just mad at the page number."
Exactly. And
did you get a paper cut? Is that what you're mad?
Exactly. You know what? The number, it set them off. They realized, oh shoot, that thing. Damn. Michael, we have to talk bad guys in this interview because, of course, you have your hero, Dray Quintero, but you have the agency, this all-powerful, shadowy organization that he and his group are fighting against over the course of this trilogy. What went into making the agency, and how did you know when you had it right?
I wanted something that was an extremely powerful force. Your hero is only as strong as their villain. So if my villain is weak or is uninteresting, then that reduces the story. So I wanted to have a complex, powerful villain. And one of the tenets that in writing Kieran, the main agent, is that everyone is the hero of their own story. Bad guys don't sit around and go, I'm evil, right? So Kieran is a conflicted, he believes he is doing what is right. And the agents what they are is they come from in the military. To become, say, a Navy SEAL or go into special forces, you have to pass a brutal physical series of tests. So my thought was those soldiers who are applying for those, that are putting themselves through all that physical uh, torture to try to pass this test, they are patriots. They believe that they are the best of the best. And what happens to those who fail, that just aren't good enough? And to me, that's where Zion, who is brains behind the agency, that's where he gets his agents from. So he picks these people up, says, I have a greater purpose for you. Follow me.
That is sadistic, and I love it. No, seriously, I love a good villain. I love a good villain that isn't just, oh, I'm evil and I'm going to ruin your life. This is I'm going to burn the whole fucking world down and laugh while it burns.
Right. And these agents, they believe they're doing it right. They are protecting the country. They are sacrificing for what they think is the greater good. And unfortunately, this has happened, throughout time, where groups of people, sometimes they get tricked and manipulated and they think they're doing what's right. And in hindsight, it's not right.
Yeah.
But, so that's the source of the agents. And Kieran in particular is conflicted, especially during the story, events that happen within the story. He personally struggles with it because he's seeing that those events are not things that good guys would be involved with. So now he is starting to struggle with his role within this organization that are doing things that are not good and right in his eyes. And what do you do? So he has a struggle and his own challenge throughout the trilogy.
Now, Michael, you're not just a novelist. You are a multi-award winning novelist. I could list all the awards, but then this would be a very, very long interview. So let's just say bunches. You won bunches of awards. Your first book was a finalist for the 2020 Indie Book Awards for sci-fi and thriller. Your second book won 9 awards, including Best Sci-Fi Fiction Novel of the Year by Indies Today. Your third book, it just came out back in April. I'm sure the nominations will come pouring in very soon.
It's actually already won an award.
Okay, well, there's that too.
It was a Gold Award with Literary Titan.
Fantastic. So we're off to a great start already.
Off to a great start. Yes.
I love that. Winning all these awards, do you see this as like a validation of your work, or maybe something that inspires you to like, buckle down and work like even harder?
Actually, it's definitely validation as a writer, because one of those, everyone thinks they can write, and well, to actually create a novel and get traditionally published, which these 3 books are traditionally published, and to have them out there, that's one thing. And of course, like any writer, I have received some great reviews. I've also received some not great, which is a normal aspect. But then to get awards, this validation that actually I do have talent as an author. But I definitely don't want to rest on my laurels. And I think that each book in the trilogy got better because I think I became more comfortable, but also I saw better what worked and what didn't work. And so each novel, I think the third one is the best in some of the reviews that I'm receiving. Also, that there was one that was saying that they thought they saved the best for last, kind of thing. So each book gets better in the trilogy.
Now, on top of everything else, you're also a book editor. You offer that service as well. Does that help you in the writing process?
It absolutely does, because especially when I'm writing, I don't really get to read as much because I'm just reading my own work over and over. So, but what it does is allows me not only to see different works, but also to see the different process and the mistakes that other authors make, and to try to see if I'm doing that in my own work, whether it's a reliance on a certain affectation or a certain phrasing of things or a certain pacing or that kind of thing. Trust me, I'm certainly not perfect. In fact, I found that in the first book, there's a grammatical error, which kills me. that it's
Oh
still there. I know
no!
it is.
Oh, that's
and
the
I saw,
worst.
right when the second book came out, I went back and looked at the first one. I'm like, oh my dear God! And my publisher edited it. I've edited it. We all missed it. So nothing's perfect, but that's part of the challenge. But that's also why editing is so key, and it can be the hardest part. The fun part, right, is creating it and having fun stuff and all his scenes and where the characters take it, the story takes it, and then the editing is going over it and cutting and trimming and tweaking and obsessing over, does this word make more sense versus that word? But I've done my job when you as the reader don't pay any attention to the actual writing. It's the story.
Michael, I'm fascinated about BookPod, which you helped found. Tell us more about that.
So it is it's a private organization of fellow creatives, primarily other authors, but there are editors, there are comic book graphic artists, the writers as well as the artists. We have documentary filmmakers, a whole collective, and actually around the globe. We have one of our authors is she's in Thailand. We have England. We have other countries, and it's a group that comes together to really support each other, be a resource to each other. Like, say, for example, okay, I have a literary contract, and gee, they're asking for this and this. Is that good? Is that problematic? Or hey, does someone have a recommendation for an entertainment lawyer? Those kinds of things. Or hey, I have this agent. She's telling me X. Is that what's typical in the industry? So we're able to be a resource and a support for each other. And one of the things is I do a newsletter where I help challenge and encourage each other and sharing the news that they provide to me. It's just to help create and continue a sense of community and support for each other, especially for writers who largely a solitary type of endeavor. You're sitting in front of your computer or pad of paper or however you write, and you're by yourself. So to have this community and support, I think really helps everyone.
Now, folks, we are coming down to the end of this conversation. So, Michael, the big question as we wrap this up, what's next for you?
That's a great question. Since I've been doing this for over 6 years, during that time, I've had other story ideas. And in various Word docs that I have, all these various scattered different story ideas, and I've been aggregating them over the last few months. And I definitely believe I have at least a dozen really good story ideas, as well as a couple of spin-off ideas for this trilogy. So now I'm trying to decide which one to do next. I'm really excited. I think, like I said, I have some great ideas, and it's just really choosing which one, because whatever I choose, I'm going to be living with for probably at least the next couple of years.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, Michael, I certainly very much look forward to not only reading the third book, but to see whatever happens next, because I know it's going to be absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Oh, and by the way, July 4th weekend, I'm going to be at the Fan Expo in downtown Denver.
Ooh,
I'm going to have a table. So if you guys are in the area,
we could see ourselves traveling. Curtis, what do you say, man? Road trip.
We're
going to Denver. We're going to Denver.
All right.
Well, folks, that brings this interview to a close. Of course, you've heard everything. Now we're going to give you the place to go. It is mcbland.com. Everything is there. You can get all the books. The new one is just out. Pick it up. Already won an award. Many, many more to come, I am certainly. And Michael, thank you once again, man, and definitely looking forward to the next conversation.
Max, Curtis, thank you so much for having me on.
You're very welcome. And to the listeners at home, thank you once again for checking out this show. I'm your host, Max Bowen.
And I'm Curtis Hughes.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
And with that, we bring this episode to a close. Thanks for listening, and if you haven't already, check us out on Facebook under Citywide Blackout, and Twitter and Instagram under Citywide Max. You can catch this and all your favorite episodes on your favorite podcast platform, and new episodes are added every week, as well as on Boston Free Radio every Saturday at 10 p.m. You get at me at citywidemax@yahoo.com if you want to suggest a guest, submit your music, or just drop us a line. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.